Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Andy Churley, Head of Marketing for Brand Shelter, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to this keynote webinar on domain monitoring and enforcement. Before we introduce you to the presenters, we'll just go through a little bit of housekeeping. So if you have any questions, please use the chat window to type them in, and at the end of the presentation, I will ask the presenters to respond to them, time permitting. Also, after the presentation, we will send you all a link to review the presentation again, or you can then forward that on to your colleagues. So, according to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, the trade in counterfeit goods accounts for over 3.3% of all world trade. The anti-counterfeiting group also found that a third of consumers actually bought fake products online. So you can see there's a large rise in online counterfeiting and online criminality. In this 45-minute webinar, our brand protection experts, Haydn Simpson and Tom Webb, we'll be looking at how fraudsters target brand owners online by registering domain names that infringe on a brand owner's IP, and what practical, rapid, and cost-effective measures brand owners can take to beat them. Before I hand over to your first presenter, let me tell you a little bit about Brand Shelter and the presenters themselves. So Brand Shelter specializes in providing online brand protection for companies and trademark owners. Brand Shelter is part of the brand services division of the CentralNic PLC, one of the world's largest domain management companies with more than 47 million domain names under management. In addition to the management, security and online brand protection surrounding domain name portfolios, Brand Shelter offers expert advice from experienced global experts. Appearing on your screen now is Haydn Simpson. Haydn is the head of Brand Shelter. He's one of the world's most respected names in the domain industry. Haydn has over 20 years experience in domain names, online brand protection and digital enablement, and he specializes in opportunities and challenges affecting brands delivering products and services through the digital channel. Haydn is charged with developing Brand Shelter's online brand protection capabilities and providing evolving solutions to optimize and protect brands now and in the future. Your second speaker will be Tom Webb. Tom is the Group Product Manager at CentralNic, and he has a track record in shaping large, complex, and digital strategies for market-leading products and services. Tom has an in-depth understanding of the internet infrastructure and the domain name industry. So without further ado, you'll hear no more from me until the end of the presentation, and I will hand over to Haydn, who will take you through the first set of slides. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. I'm talking to you from an unseasonably warm and sunny southeast England, so I'll enjoy that while it lasts. As far as the agenda goes for today, we're going to be looking at what the online infringement landscape looks like right now. We're going to be talking about the value of domain monitoring and enforcement. Tom will be talking you through how that works and what enforcement options are available. We'll finish with a couple of use cases and some Q&A if we've got time for that. So there's quite a bit to get through, so I will just dive straight in. In terms of the existing online infringement landscape, we've seen a huge amount of change over the last 12 months in particular. Digital channels were growing at an unprecedented rate anyway, but that has just accelerated throughout 2020, driven by the COVID pandemic. And that's accelerated digital migration and transformation. That's not just for businesses, but also for consumers as well. And it's not just for work, it's also for social needs. I read somewhere a couple of weeks ago that 40% of digital leaders in large corporations said that COVID-19 had accelerated their digitization or digital transformation plans by between 5 and 8 years. So we're really seeing an unprecedented growth, particularly in emerging markets, and consolidation of digital channels for the delivery and purchase of goods and services in more established markets as well. So, there's no doubt there's an unprecedented growth. Domain names continue to be a key part of this ecosystem. Obviously, social media plays a part and other channels as well, but domain names are absolutely core to not only how people go about their business online, but also establishing trust between consumers and the goods that they're purchasing. So domains remain, and as far as I'm concerned, will always play a key part in the digital ecosystem. Many of the consumers and businesses that are taking part in this online growth remain unaware of the risks to themselves or to their businesses, and there is no doubt that criminals are taking advantage of this, and that they are cashing in, if you like, on this digital boom. The use of domains by unauthorized third parties is on the rise. As domain registrations are an integral part of the ecosystem, they are used by third parties for a series of malicious activities. On the right-hand side, the graphic you see here is from the Anti-Phishing Working Group, and this shows the rise in phishing activity up to Q3 2020. You can see a sharp rise when COVID began, and that continues to this day. So I'm looking forward to latest figures when they come out. But everything points to a rise in criminal activity online that's accompanying the rise in consumer and business activity as well. So domains are used by unauthorized third parties, and some of those uses are what I would term mild. I guess mild depends upon your point of view, but talking to brand owners, traffic diversion to third-party sites and pay-per-click sites is most cases more of an annoyance than the more severe cases below. Some of which can be phishing attacks, identity theft, sale of counterfeit goods, and fraud. Domains are used in all of those by online criminals. So it's important to understand that, and important to understand what that means for you as a business. I truly believe that there is a clear and present threat to people's abilities to do businesses online if they don't necessarily understand the threats that are ranged against them. Some of these can be explained by the 3 points below. If you don't have a good overview as to what is happening online and who is using your brands, that means that you can have a lack of control over digital channels. That threatens key routes to market based on the digitization that we've previously talked about. That will lead to a loss of revenue through diversion of your customers to counterfeit and fraudulent sites. That loss of revenue doesn't necessarily stop there. Again, understanding the knock-on effect of that, counterfeit goods being returned to brand owners purporting to be real goods, the demands of consumers for replacement or credit as far as buying counterfeit goods are concerned, having to set up perhaps call centers to deal with counterfeit and fraud. All of those are costs that are built into not being able to control the online channel and the loss of revenue that comes off the back of that. And let's also not forget the reputational damage from association with counterfeit and fraud. We all know that the internet is a mouthpiece for literally anyone in the world, and reputational damage can be inflicted pretty quickly. So, domain infringements, present that challenge to you. You can see on the right-hand side of the screen a screenshot from the World Intellectual Property Organization website showing that they're actually a victim of hoax emails and phishing scams as well. So even WIPO is subject to this kind of abuse, and so we all need to be cognizant that that's the case. I think one of the most interesting things that I've seen is that brands that have never been affected by fraud or counterfeit, and this could be because they're small or medium-sized enterprises. It could be because they've always worked in business-to-business channels as opposed to business-to-consumer, and therefore haven't been on the radar of counterfeiters and fraudsters. There's a number of reasons for this, but brands that have never been affected are now seeing that they are being attacked through domain name registrations and other methodologies. My counsel to brand owners is it's super important these days to have an online brand protection strategy in place, or to revise the brand protection strategy that you may have had up until this point. Digitization is a critical route to market. Those channels are absolutely fundamental to how your business will survive and thrive, and therefore protecting it in the right way is something that I would encourage. So in terms of domain monitoring and enforcement, how does that play a part in helping you to understand and control those digital channels? You know, when we talk about brand protection services, we talk about a very, very wide range of services, everything from trademark protection all the way through to complex anti-counterfeiting and anti-fraud capabilities. And whilst we fulfill many of those needs, today we just want to talk about domain monitoring and enforcement. I believe this fills a very specific need and is the cornerstone of every online brand protection strategy. Domain names often reflect trademarks and other intellectual property, and really is your kind of IP online. Your IP is the lifeblood of your business. So therefore, protecting that intellectual property in the most straightforward way, I think, is of utmost importance. And domain monitoring certainly allows you to do that. We talk to a lot of brand owners on a daily basis, people that work with us and people that don't work with us. And so we get a really good understanding and a view of what brand owners are looking for. And there are three real key areas that brand owners tell us that they want to know about. Firstly is, what is happening that affects my business online? What does the landscape look like? How do I know that my brand is safe or not? And how do I understand, you know, who is using my brand for purposes that may be abusive or that I don't know about, or that affects, you know, negatively or positively my business online? And let's not forget, you know, there are a lot of positives here with understanding the online landscape as well. It presents opportunity as well as threat. But what's happening online is key. You know, that knowledge is key to how we understand what we do next. And if we find that there are infringements online, and almost certainly there will be, how do I find and prioritize those infringements is the second, you know, subsequent question. And then leading to, okay, so if I've got infringements and they're affecting my brand, what can I do about them, and can you help me to get rid of them? So domain monitoring fills that very specific need to do with domain infringements and the treatment of those infringements after they've been found. Data is super important in this. It's probably possible to find, you know, a percentage of infringements using Google and an intern and a keyboard. That's not something that we would necessarily advocate, because it's expensive and it's time consuming, and it's not particularly accurate. So in talking with brand owners, data is becoming a much more important part of how they do things, and they want to make data-driven decisions. Monitoring uses data to uncover and prioritize online infringements. That's taken as given. There are lots of services out there that can help you to do this kind of thing, but finding the right data at the right time is the only way of providing a clear picture of what's happening. And that data can drive decision making and can also help you to focus resources and budget on key infringements and key enforcements to get the best result possible. We all know that budgets are under pressure from all sorts of angles. We all know that you know, people are needing to make decisions and to make right decisions with you know, limited budgets. So domain monitoring fits into that very well. It provides that data that allows that clarity of decision and allows you to focus on what is having the most effect on your brands online. And thirdly, brand owners tell us that they need a reliable partner to help them to do this. Some brands, perhaps some of the most counterfeited brands, have multiple lawyers focused on online brand protection, and perhaps some of them even built their own in-house systems. That's very unusual. So most of our clients and prospects look to us for the tools and the reliability and human expertise to get the job done. On the left-hand side, you can see some different roles in brand owners. These are typically the kind of people that we talk to and that we engage with: intellectual property lawyers, marketing professionals, IT security professionals, and business managers and executive level. Those are people that we typically engage with for domain monitoring and enforcement. They have different excuse me. They have different needs. Most of those needs are have a similar thread to them, but they look at things in a different way. For example, IP lawyers may look at infringements as a just straight infringements using trademarks as a key priority. IT and security professionals may look at the discovery of threats and the mitigation of those threats in a slightly different way. The point is that domain monitoring and enforcement is extremely flexible, and it can lend itself to multiple disciplines within the same organization. So that's something that we can consider from different angles. As far as brand shadow is concerned, there are 4 key areas that we provide as a trusted partner to our brand owner clients. Those are really around the data, and I won't go into this in much detail because Tom is going to talk about this shortly, but accuracy of data, frequency of delivery of that data, and ease of access to the data are all super important for the usability and the prioritization of that data for infringement. And then obviously our expertise from an enforcement perspective, built over decades of experience, is brought to bear as well. So those 4 points are really where we see our support for brand owners as key. Accuracy is super important, obviously, because you're finding the right kind of infringements. The frequency, we know that some tools deliver only monthly, for example, for domain monitoring results. We have options where we can consider daily or even more frequently if necessary. And ease of access we deliver through online platforms as well as email and cater for all sorts of different capabilities there. So the need for data, the need to be able to prioritize that and have a reliable partner to do that on behalf of brand owners is central to our domain monitoring and enforcement product. I'm going to hand you over to Tom now, who's going to talk a little bit more about the actual product itself and how it works. Tom.
Thanks for that, Haydn. So yeah, as Haydn mentioned, I'm going to take you through a bit more detail around how the product actually works and take you through some of the features and the why and how it all goes together. So Haydn has done a very good job of explaining the problem space. Just to explain it just more at a practical level, if you think about any valuable term that you as a brand owner have, that value is obviously going to become something that is an opportunity for some malicious third party to try and profit from. Now, in the case of domain name monitoring, the way that manifests itself is usually a malicious user will register valuable terms that you own, either exact matches in other TLDs, or they might do typographically similar, so typos, which people typically get wrong, or they might add words around your valuable terms to create unique strings that they can then go and register. Now, they do all of this to get the reflected glory of your valuable term, and doing that, they can profit in 3 main ways. One would be from the infringement itself. That's some of the things that Haydn mentioned, the mild items like traffic diversions or pay-per-click. But they might go and do something more nefarious with it. So they might do some phishing or some other type of fraud, counterfeit, and other things like that. Or they might just squat on a domain that you may at some point want to own because they've got ahead of you and started registering domain names that you have products launching in or something like that. So this is what those infringers will try and do. So to be in front of the game, you need to think about domain name monitoring to get in front of this or understand when it has happened to take action. So you've got to think of domain name monitoring as a proactive solution to a problem that will come down the horizon. So this is about seeking out and finding those infringements and creating a protective barrier around your valuable terms and your brands. So this is a way for you to be present in the market, know what's going on, and take action where it's appropriate to protect both your customers, but also your brand and your assets. In order for that to be effective, it's really important that you have strong coverage over the TLD space. You need to know what is being registered, where it is, and all the variations upon the terms that you have and that are of value to you. And then, of course, there's going to be a whole load of information that comes out of that. So you need an effective way to prioritize, review, and even take action upon what you find. Some of it you won't care about. It will be things that are confusingly similar terms to your own, or someone has just registered it as a fan page or something like that, and you can ignore all of that. But when you find the really important stuff, when you find the phishing or the fraudulent site, you want to know that it exists, and you want to take action fast enough so that you can have an effect. Because a lot of these fraudulent things tend to have small windows of time, so it's really important that you find them quickly and then you act upon them. Hence why this is a proactive IP solution. How do we do that? Well, there are three parts to how we can support you going through now. The first bit is the core technological solution, which is our domain monitoring. Now, this is coverage over 2,000 plus TLDs, so all of the major generics and a lot of TLDs, and all of their subdomains as well. We also have some other in a reflected way. So the number is larger than 2,000, but we're very solid across the 2,000 TLDs. So that's a huge coverage across the domain name space. We have engines that are there to do typographic, IDN, and homograph changes. A homograph is where there's a confusingly similar character, so an umlaut on an O or something like that, which is designed to trick people into thinking it's a valid domain name. But we also capture a lot more information. It's really important that you have a rich data set upon which to make your assessments of what's going on. So we do collect more information around who is the DNS usage, screenshots of what's being put up on web pages, who the registrar is, and things like that. With our domain monitoring, it's important that you're able to go through that and make sense of it. Now, we do have expert analysts, but you can also do this yourself to go through and categorize those threats that are found. Now, some of them will be irrelevant, but most of them are likely to be some kind of infringement that you might want to take a look at. Now, our expert IP analysts can support you in going through that, or you can do it yourself. It's up to you, but they can provide analysis and recommendations of what you should concentrate and what you shouldn't concentrate on. That can be really valuable. It frees up your teams to be doing other things, and you've got a group of people here who really know what they're talking about. But it's no point having all of that information about what's going on and analysts if you can't do something about it. You are going to find something, and that is the worrying thing about having a domain monitor. It's going to show you what's going on, and it's certain that you'll get annoyed by something that you find and you will want to act. So we have an enforcement capability of intellectual property lawyers who's there to take the appropriate action based on the type of infringement that's going on. That can be simple things like domain suspensions or whois disclosures, but it can go down to other legal options like UDRPs or URSs where we go to take the domain name down at source. This is all ongoing monitoring, and I'll talk about what that is. We also have a domain audit. That is something where you can go and look back and say, well, here's a term I care about. Can you tell me about this term and show me what might have been registered in the past about this and provide me an audit about that? Now, that can be really useful if you've not done any of this proactive IP stuff before and you just want to get a lay of the land, how much is out there and what should I be worried about. But it can also be really useful as a tool to proactively think about things coming up. So you might have a new product or brand name that you're going to launch, and maybe you want to do a survey across the market, or maybe you just want to go and look at what another competitor is doing by using some of their terms. So there's the ability to use that audit as a way of looking through and understanding the lay of the market and the TLD space as well. How do we deliver this to this? Well, there's a frequency, as Haydn discussed. We can do this in a daily, weekly, or monthly format. So you will get a report on that frequency. So if you have a very infringing name or term, or you want to be able to be proactive and very fast on things, so maybe you're a high-end consumer goods brand, then it'll be really important to have probably daily feeds so you can see what is being registered so you can take fast action. If your brand is not infringed that much, but you want to keep an eye on things, you might move to something like a monthly ticker just to see what's happening on a month-by-month basis. And we can guide you and help you understand that. We can do pre-scans and other bits and pieces to help determine what would be the best frequency for you. Everything is done is emailed to you direct to your inbox, so you can respond and act to that whenever you like. You can send that to multiple recipients, and it gives you a comprehensive overview of what the service has found. But also we provide this monitoring platform. This is an ability for you to come in and self-serve on the results that come through. So see the multiple data points we've collected, categorize and add notes. And also it has a powerful export capability, so you can take that out to other IP protection systems should you have those and want to integrate into them. The monitoring platform, it has a number of features. So there is the statistics dashboard, which is a nice overview of what's going on, the detailed reports, extensive data and powerful search through it all. You can capture notes, some categorization and export, as I just mentioned. And what I want to do now is I want to take the opportunity to give you a demo of this platform, which I will do now. So now thinking about what I was discussing at the end was enforcement. It's really important that you have the ability to take action upon what you find within the results that come up. So I just want to talk a bit about enforcement. We've touched on it before, but once that infringement has been detected and you want to take some action, it's really important that you have the facility and the ability to do that. Like I mentioned, our IP legal teams can help you with that, and it can be at many different levels. So it can be something like just trying to get the domain suspended at the registrar or the registry level, using your IP protections and your copyrights to do that. You might want to go to the hosting provider to take down there. You may want to just know who it is, just to check that is it something that has been registered by your marketing team in the wrong place. You want to go and find that out before you start taking legal action, or another friendly affiliate or something like that that is important for you to know before you take action. Then there's all the more complicated but important legal steps you can take within the ICANN framework around dispute resolutions over domain names, as well as you might want to do things beyond that. So you might find domains or terms that are pointing to social media, app stores, and other things, which are other areas to monitor where you might want to take action. And our team are very experienced in doing that too. And finally, you might find a name that is something you wish you had registered yourself, or something that you think, hey, that would be great to own. And we also have the ability to do some anonymous domain acquisitions on your behalf, because announcing your name and your brand to a owner of an existing domain name may set the price up a bit. So we're able to do that on your behalf and take those actions for you. So that's hopefully a useful overview of the product and the services that we have. And now I'll hand back over to Haydn, who's going to take you through some of the use cases.
Thanks, Tom. Very useful indeed. Great to see the platform in action and to understand what capabilities there are and what choices we have. As Tom said, extremely flexible, and we can adapt the technology and the way we go about things, including advisory and analytical work to each individual client. And in fact, that's exactly what we do before we start any service. And there are opportunities for us to customize that to meet exact needs. That leads into a few very simple different use cases. Who can benefit from domain monitoring and enforcement? Well, very simply, I think anyone who distributes products and services through digital channels should consider this as part of their online brand strategy. It is a part of a brand protection strategy, but I think it's an integral part of how we're going to move forward doing business online. Online is transactions are based upon trust. That's why consumers look for things like SSL certificates to give them that kind of secure handshake between who's selling them the services and what they're buying. And if that trust is eroded, then very simply, in a highly competitive marketplace, consumers or other businesses will begin to look elsewhere very quickly. So I think it's extremely important that we understand what's going on, what we need to prioritize, and how we can mitigate any threats. That will lead to greater opportunities through digital channels. And as we've seen in terms of the online and the rise of e-commerce and the rise and let's say acceleration of digital transformation, I think that's going to become increasingly important in the future. All types of industries, this is relevant for. We have clients from many different industries and many different geographies, and these services are applicable to all of those. So again, it's something to consider as part of a wider digital strategy. So just 3 different use cases that I can show here. One is for IT and security officers to use domain monitoring to mitigate phishing attacks against their customers. Again, speed is of the essence, and that's something that you need to consider in order to find and take action against individual infringements as quickly as possible before the damage is done. Intellectual property lawyers or IP professionals or trademark professionals use domain monitoring to comprehensively detect and suspend domain registrations before fraud or counterfeit is perpetrated. That can be very simply just a straight trademark infringement before any usage is seen, and wanting to kill that domain as quickly as possible. Again, early detection of that is essential, and a domain monitoring product can do that. And then we have brand protection managers who would use domain monitoring as part of a wider anti-counterfeiting or anti-fraud service to identify clusters of domain names selling counterfeit goods and enforce against multiple sites at the same time. Again, this is something that is relevant to those wider services, and it's something that quite a few different suppliers of those services tend to forget and tend to focus on the more complex side of things, which I understand why. But a simple, in inverted commas, service like domain monitoring may suffer as a result of that. So this can be used as a standalone service or part of a wider brand protection program as well. I guess the key takeaway, and I mentioned this at the beginning, this is not just relevant to big corporate global brands with multiple trademarks. This is also relevant to small and medium enterprises as well, across all industries and geographies. And hopefully this presentation has kind of shone a light on some of the things that could be of concern and some of the opportunities that you could take through using a service like this. So I'd just like to summarize the key points. Firstly, the digitization of products, services, and behaviors continues to accelerate, and digital channels are at a forefront of that, and obviously essential to businesses and consumers alike. That's not going to change. That's here to stay. And doing business through digital channels is going to be crucial for thriving in the future. So securing those digital channels is something that I think is of utmost importance. Because of that, criminals will continue to take advantage of brands' names and reputations to steal revenues, steal clients, steal customers, and erode reputations through infringing domain names. Domain names are an integral part of this ecosystem and will continue to be used by brands and criminals alike to promote their own services. Often I get asked as to how we should look at infringers and their activities, and I encourage brand owners to look at them as any other competitor. And if any other legitimate competitor was using your trademarks or brand names to gain advantage in the digital channels, I would treat them in the same way. I'd treat infringers in the same way as those legitimate competitors. So that's a mindset shift that I think could be quite important to take on over the coming months and years. They're in it for money. They want to compete with legitimate brands. So let's treat them like a competitor and make sure that we shut them down. Domain monitoring is an affordable and flexible solution. It's an essential part of the brand protection puzzle, and it provides accurate data and expert support to help you understand that landscape and take action against those infringements. It's not just for big brands with huge budgets. It is affordable. It is something that is, has a low entry level and can be very effective for you. So I know that quite a few brands are reluctant to enter into, online brand protection because they see or they imagine that all of these solutions are extremely expensive. That's not the case, and it would be, this is something that can be explored at a very basic level as well as part of a much wider remit. So don't be afraid to understand what the possibilities are. And as I mentioned before, as a cornerstone of a digital strategy, I think protecting your businesses in digital channels is absolutely fundamental, and domain monitoring and enforcement is a fundamental part of that brand protection strategy. So those are the key points. Thank you, very much for your participation and attention. We're now going to go to some questions, I think. But before we do that, I'd just like to say that, product and service descriptions are available. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you're an existing client to your account manager, or using the contact details that'll be at the end of this presentation. We're happy to talk about these things in a bit more detail, including providing individual platform demonstrations. Obviously, we welcome those discussions. This initiative, happy to provide obligation risk for your and your brands, and that's been one of our expert teams. So, like I said, no obligation. Please feel free to take advantage of that. I think it's probably now time for some questions.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Haydn, for a really interesting presentation and demo. We've had a few questions in on the chat, so I will just throw them over to you, and please feel free to answer them as you see fit. The first question we've had in was, I am a small business owner. If a third party infringes on my brand, what practical and low-cost steps can I take to prevent them?
I'm happy to answer that, unless, Tom, you want to jump in there? No, I'm happy to answer that. So I think, as I alluded to, there are some brand protection capabilities that are not exclusive to people with big budgets. We understand that this is a problem that's affecting SMEs all the way up to large corporates. So we're really keen to make these kind of products and services available to everyone. They're not as expensive as you may think, and you can literally spend a couple of hundred euros or dollars on a single enforcement action against a particular case. You can obviously take an entry-level monitoring solution, which is affordable, probably around about $100 or 100 euros a month, depending upon your exact circumstances. So there are ways that we can make this available to as many people as possible. It's not as expensive as you think. Many people imagine that they're engaging with law firms, and some law firm fees are quite expensive. So I'd encourage you to have a conversation with us about what the possibilities are. There are some practical and low cost entry level solutions that we can provide.
Excellent, thank you, Haydn. I'll throw one over to Tom now. What is the most cost effective way of monitoring for domain infringements? You're on mute. You're still on mute.
Sorry, pressed the wrong button. Classic. So yeah, there are many different ways to do that, and the most cost-effective ways really come down to your need and the purpose of what you're trying to do. A domain monitoring setup is one of the most cost-effective ways to look at it. It will give you the information, but the way to make it the most cost-effective is making sure that you pick the right term that you want to be monitoring. We also have labels, so we have additional labels you can have on that to make sure that your coverage is accurate and that you maintain that the results that you get are relevant to you, so that you can optimize how many results you're getting and what you're going through and what action you're taking. So yeah, I think as Haydn has mentioned, this works for anyone, and it is a cost-effective way to be proactive, because something you find early and you deal with is much better than something you find late and has already made it into counterfeiting or into your support teams, and they're having to deal with it. So this is a very cost-effective way of stopping more expensive things down the line.
Thanks, Tom. And Haydn, there's a quick question. You've already explained that there's a wide range of different brand protection mechanisms that we can look at for brand enforcement. Which of the enforcement mechanisms available to most businesses provides the fastest results? No, you're on mute.
So I just turned off my mic to answer the question, which is interesting. But anyway, yeah. So look, I think it's looking at each individual case on its own merit is important. It may be that if one of the things that we work hard on is having some very well-developed relationships with registrars, for example. So it may be that if it's a slam dunk case and we have that relationship in place, we can get a domain suspended, very, very quickly at registrar level, which is a great result. If we can't do that, then it may be worth looking at disrupting the activity of that domain through maybe suspending the content at hosting level, or getting it delisted from search engines, for example. So we would take each case on its own merit. We'd understand exactly what the best option is for that case to get the best result as quickly as possible. And it may be that we need to take multiple, actions against that domain, to keep disrupting it. So, there's lots of stuff available that we can do. It's a question of what the domain is, where it's at in terms of registrar and hosting provider, and how much harm it's doing to the business as to exactly what route we would take. But there are options, some of which are quicker than others. Depends on the domain.
Thanks, Haydn. And we're running a little bit late for time, so we've got 2 more questions, and then we'll have to close the session. But Tom, question for you: do I need to engage a law firm to do enforcement and UDRP procedures?
No, you don't have to engage those. It's important that the people that you do engage have competency around running those processes, and actually sometimes you can find that IP protection people can do that effectively. I would say people with a law background will understand those processes better and understand the further things that you can do. So within our team, we have expert analysts which are able to go through the results, but also we have IP lawyers there who have the deep understanding should a case get rather complicated. But it's perfectly possible to run through those processes without lawyers, and in some cases it can sometimes be done with expertise that some IP lawyers won't have in specific domain name related processes.
Thanks, Tom. And Haydn, final question before we wrap up. Are registries and registrars obliged to suspend a domain name if requested by a trademark holder?
Short answer, no. Without some kind of court intervention or maybe law enforcement intervention. I think what's important to recognise is that there's a lot of friendly registrars out there. There are some unfriendly registries and registrars out there who really don't care about brand owner rights, in which case it's going to be more difficult and they won't feel obliged. I think if we look at it, that they're trying to run businesses themselves, and if they expose themselves through unilateral suspension of domains to litigation, if they wrongfully suspend the domain, or take action against an individual domain, that's going to be costly for them. So I think working with them to understand their processes, understanding, what their outlook is and what their opinion is, builds up relationships that allows us to be a little bit more, let's say quick and efficient about how we do things. But many will view that they're not obliged to take any action at all, in which case other opportunities, for enforcement may have to be taken.
Thanks, Haydn. Well, I'd like to thank everyone, firstly our presenters for an excellent job, and everyone for attending. I'd just like to point out we have a webinar on the 8th of April at 3 p.m. GMT. This subject is really quite interesting. This is to be part of the brand checking strategy, because the main strategy which register, which means you don't need to register, which potentially avoid, how to get your optimized portfolio and what it's likely to cost you. That webinar will be happening on the 8th of April, as I've said, at 3 p.m. GMT, and we would be delighted to welcome you there again. So finally, I'll just thank everybody again for coming, and look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Thanks very much, and we're about to close the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.